All right, so I'm recording, and you have your mocap clips here. You download those, you unzip them, and then you're going to open up your scene. I'm just going to close this scene. I didn't change anything in it. And let's look at, I don't know why this is doing this. So this is the scene I had open the other day, where I put together a sequence of several different things. One actually from Mixamo. So there was a flip from Mixamo, and there was a, a idle type of thing. But there were some problems that needed to be fixed. It wasn't a complete sequence. I mean, it was a sequence, but it needed to be edited. And you really can't efficiently edit the mocap data directly. So you have to do what's called baking to a control rig. So here's the scene. And the one we did the other day was this one here. And so it has the character moving around with some of the Natalia's witch movements. And then I put in a backflip. Right, so from Mixamo, if I do a backflip, I have to go to some professional service to get that. And Mixamo has a bunch of stuff on it that you probably may not be able to do yourself. And there's a lot of other ones out there. Rococo actually has a whole free library of mocap scripts that you can download as well. And so I brought in that one. I processed it exactly the same way as I did the Mixamo ones before. And I also processed the mocap clip from the other source too. And it all looks fine. And probably I wouldn't want to just end with that flip. I'd probably want to have something else. So I could add another thing here by hitting the plus symbol and choosing something else. And again, it doesn't have to be one of Natalia's clips. It could be one of these other ones. So let's say we use this Cora one here. And if I'm going to do that, I'm going to add it a little bit beyond the end of the clips, because I don't want it to like cut into what I've already done. So I'll move the cursor out beyond the end, and then I'll add that other clip in. And I can then drag it and see what that looks like. And so that one, the character kind of is down there on the ground, or close to the ground, sort of touching the ground. And so I might want to, because my character's on the ground right here, it might be useful to actually use right around there. And so I can go and take the rest of that clip and just drag it back to cut out all of that other stuff that was at the beginning. And then I can move the cursor over to here so there's a slight overlap with the other clip and drag it over and snap it to that point so that there's an overlap. And by having an overlap, it's gonna try to mix those two clips together. And you can see there's some weird movement there in that it goes from where the one clip's positioned to where the other clip's positioned. And so I need to fix that. And I fixed that by taking the clip that you just moved over and matching it with the previous clip and choosing something in here. Sometimes I use a foot, but in this case, I'd probably try to use the pelvis. And so if I choose the pelvis there, and then there's other choices there too, like you can match the height, you can match the different kinds of rotation of the previous one. So maybe I want to match the rotation, both the pitch and roll. And that's pretty good. There's a little things there. It's actually dipping down into the ground. But it's not bad. So I could then, I have to fix those problems. So the dipping down in the ground part here is pretty noticeable. If we zoom out a little bit more and go a little further, you can see the characters like down to their knees in the ground. And at the other part, there's a dip right there too. So all of those little dips and things need to be fixed. So to do that, I can't really do it on the Mocap data because the Mocap data has a keyframe on every frame and it's very dense. And it would be really time consuming to try and edit all those keyframes. And you don't want to have to do that. So what you're going to do is you're going to, first I'll save all of this. And then I want to bake this to a control rig where I can have an additive layer. And if I right-click the body of my character here, you'll find about halfway up, bake to control rig. And you would choose the Metahuman control rig. And it's going to bring up options for it. Generally, I don't really change any of these options. It says linear because there's a frame key on every frame, so usually those are linear interpolation between them because it's every frame. But I would just go ahead and leave it at the defaults and hit create. And it's going to calculate a control rig to the body of this character. It's going to have all kinds of controls in the arms and legs, so you can then choose and move them around to edit the character's performance. And the performance is going to all be there. What it's doing is it's baking the current animation, which is not on any kind of control rig, to the control rig. So you'll see the parts of the control rig moving around as your animation plays. But then you're going to be able to set keys on that control rig on a layer. It's kind of like Photoshop. You have your layers in Photoshop, and you can be able to then do stuff on a layer that's going to be added to the underlying animation. You get the best of both worlds there. You get the naturalness of the mocap movement with the preciseness of being able to position your character's limbs and body. It is kind of an intensive process. That's why I saved before I did it. Okay, so when it's done, you're going to get some animation stuff coming up. This is actually all the stuff on the control rig over here. But it's also down here, and I don't really use this much up here. It's kind of like an outliner for the control rig, but I instead use it down in the sequencer itself. You still have all the details and stuff there. They're just kind of underneath my zoom here. But there's the outliner's still there and everything. It's just a separate window that opens. It could be useful. This one over here is to show different parts on the rig, but generally I don't think we really need to use that. Like you can show the hierarchy and the you can hide certain things, but I'm just going to close that. Ideally, when you're moving, when you're going to use a control rig like this, you want a view that is going to be in sort of your camera view that's going to be in cinematic mode so that you don't see the control rig, because there's a lot of stuff on there. If I zoom into it here, you can see that there is quite a lot of stuff on that character. And you can't see your animation very well when you have all that stuff on top of it. But you can see it fine in your game view and your camera view. Over here, if it's set to cinematic, because it doesn't show things like that. And then what you'll see is when it bakes it, you see all the controls are actually moving. And the keyframes are right here. And when I said they're on every frame, that's what they look like when they're on every frame. And if you open that up, you'll see that these are all the controls in the control rig with keys on every frame. It would be a nightmare to try to edit these. So you don't want to have to mess with that at all. You just leave that closed up. And instead, what you're going to want to do is you want to right click I think it's the animation. Let me just check. Actually, sorry, it's the actual control rig. So past the animation where it says Metahuman control rig, right click that, and you want to add a section and you want it to be additive. So I'm adding an additive section and to the current control rig that has keyframes on every frame. And it will, I'm going to undo that for a second. You okay? I'm just going to undo that for a second because I wasn't on frame 0 and it actually started it way out here. I'm going to make sure I'm back on frame 0 and I'm going to do it again. Right click the control rig channel, go to add section, additive, and okay, now it's starting at 0. And there's this additive layer here. And I actually go over here usually to this because they name it the same thing. I'll just call this additive rig. So it's easy for me to see where the additive one is. All right, so this is the one with all the keys, and if you open it up, all of those things are in there with keys on them. But with this new one, additive rig layer, if I open it up, you'll see that all the things are in there. So, and you can select all the control rig pieces just from right here. Like if I click on body offset, it selects this one down here, which is for moving the body, the whole body around. So there's one for the thigh and for the calf and the foot. Or you can go up here and click on these directly, or you can go over here and click on them on the right here. But I personally usually do it over here or in the interface. And what I want to do is I want to move the character up and down. So that's actually going to be this body offset control piece. And you'll see that they don't have any keys on there. There's no keys there. So I can start setting keys. But there's a trick to it. You don't want to set a new key. When you set a new key, it's going to propagate across everything that doesn't have keys. So all the frames that don't have keys will take whatever change you make whenever you make a key from left to right. So if I were to key this right now, right here, it would use that key for the entire track until it finds another key. That's how keys work. They interpolate between the keys. So what you have to do is you have to first go through and put some neutral keys. Keys that will lock the character into place where it's already correct, right? You don't want to start moving things around and setting keys and move everything else off that was correct to a wrong place, right? You want it to stay like right here at the beginning. My character's feet are not in the ground. I don't want to all of a sudden adjust for the feet being in the ground and mess up this part, because this part looks fine. So you go through the animation and you find parts where you think it looks fine at the beginning, middle, and end, and you set keys on everything in there. And that way you don't mess up what's already correct in there when you start making your fixes. You want to fix as little as possible, because the more you fix, the more you might mess it up. Ideally, you're making it better, not worse. So it's a careful process that you have to do. So if I'm going to do that, if I'm going to set some neutral keys, it's going to be on the very top layer, the part where if this was closed, you wouldn't see all the other stuff. There's a keyframe button right here with a little plus on it. And at 0, since I like this frame, and even if I didn't like this frame, I might want to just lock this into place and then readjust it later. But I pretty much like this frame, so I'm going to set an additive key right here at 0, where it currently is, at the top level. And by doing that, if I open this up, actually, it's still thinking about it. It hasn't done it yet. There's a lot of stuff in this rig, so it might slow down a little bit. So it just finished and set the key. You can see the pink dot. If I open this up, you'll see that there's pink dots all the way down. It set a key on everything in the rig at this frame. And I would just do that to isolate where it is I want to make my changes. Like if I pretty much like all of this, especially if I'm looking at just doing the feet right now, and I like all of this and I like the foot placement, then I might want to go all the way to where the feet start doing something I don't like, where they start going in the ground. And right before that, where it's still in a place where I like, say right there, I'll set another additive key on, make sure you do it on the right channel. It's on this additive rig channel. It's thinking about it. So now, when it comes up, it's gonna keep it the same way it is between those two keys without any changes. And that'll lock down what I already have that I don't want to mess up. So if I had gone to the part where I did want to change it, where he's down in the ground and just moved it up, then the character would have started moving up all the way from this first part of the animation, and it would have been up in the air for a lot of the animation. And I don't want that to happen. So I also see that he's kind of in the right place right before he does his backflip. And I can zoom in on this area to get a better sort of granular view of this area where I can actually see all the keys. And, I can see that right before he does the backflip, his feet look okay. Maybe right there on that frame. And so I could set another control rig, not this one, advanced additive rig key right there. So I've kind of locked down the correct placement of the feet on either side of the area that I want to fix. Right, so I won't lose what's correct on those places. And then I'll go halfway through that when the feet are all the way down in the ground. And I want to set as little keys as possible, but I don't know. I might have to do one on every single frame to make it the way I want it. And that would be fine. But I'll start halfway through and see if that fixes the problem. And I'll just take the control that I want. I'll open this up now. Go find where the body offset is, because I already know that's the one that's going to move this character up and down. And, try to place this somewhere right around here is in the middle. There's not an exact placement. And then I'll just move it up until the feet are on the ground. And I'll hit. Now I could do an overall additive rig key again, but I think that since I'm just moving this one thing, I probably don't need to set all those other keys. So I'm just going to do this one body offset. And you see that came up a lot faster, right? It takes time when it does all the keys. So now I'll scrub it and see, is it right now? No, not really. It's going up in the air halfway between this. So I'm going to want to pull that back down. And set a key. And then I'm going to want to still going up a little bit. You can always reset a key. So you have a move to key here, like jump to the previous key or the next key. If you want to make sure you replace a key, just use those to go to that previous key. And if it looks like, oh, well, maybe it needs to be a little bit further down. Yeah, right there. Still looks like it's going up too much. I'll reset that key. And I'll try it again. And that looks better. It's still kind of going up in between those. So I might want to go ahead and, just keep looking at it and setting keys. And right here, it's really going down into the ground. So I'll just go ahead and move that whole thing up. And again, in between those, I'm also getting it going into the ground. So to fix this problem, I might have to set a key on every single frame, but it's only for a small section. So actually that looks okay. Now, if I really don't like some of the sliding that's going on in this transition, this actually looks okay, but it's sliding a little bit. I could go to the foot, like the actual foot, and adjust that. So you can see when I click on it in the interface for the foot, it actually shows, it switches where I am at in the sequence and goes to that. And then I can decide, oh, well, it's kind of shifting a lot, sliding a lot, which might be okay. He is changing weight from one foot to the other before he jumps. So it could be that the foot would slide a little bit, but let's say I don't want this one to slide so much, the other one, because that one is supposed to be planted on the ground there and still kind of sliding a little bit. So you could adjust that. You have this foot control here that I could move it around and adjust the actual foot. Now I know that on either side of here, I've got a key on to this is not going to propagate anywhere beyond those two keys. So if I don't like it, or it's not going to mess up much, and I could always delete the key again. But let's say I want it to plant there. Let's just do a key there. And then when it shifts a little bit, it kind of goes up a little bit. So I'm going to pull it back down so it doesn't shift up, and just set another key here. And so that made that foot a little bit more still. It's still shaking around a little bit. I could look over here in the numbers and like find out what numbers this key was and that not what number, and put the same numbers in this key, and then it wouldn't move at all. Right? Because the numbers in the same place and the location of it. If I wanted to be exact and not move at all. But sometimes you wouldn't really notice a little bit of movement, and actually it makes the character look more alive if there's a little bit of movement. So if I go ahead and play that section that I've been working on, I'll just play it. It looks a lot better. You know, it goes by fast, but now he's not dipping into the ground before he does his backflip. I fixed that problem. And now I would go to the next section where he gets down into the ground, and I'll pull him up there too. Now that whole section is in the ground. So maybe I can let the keys propagate all the way across it. So I'm going to go all the way back up to the top here and to the additive rig layer, to the very top layer. And I want to look and see where the character, after the backflip, he gets up. And for this entire section here, I think the character is kind of down in the ground. Let me just see what it looks like. Yeah, so he's all the way down in the ground to his knees right there. And it's pretty consistent across the whole, actually it goes back up and it ends right there. So I think it might be good just to go to where it's really down in the ground here, like all the way down in the knees, and just maybe move the whole character up, because that's totally wrong. And just set a new additive rig key on all the frames with it where it should be. So I'm going to move the body offset control up first. Put the character up where it should be. And rather than just key the body offset control, let's try keying the additive rig so it sets a key on everything. Again, there's a bunch in there, so it's taken a second for it to register that. Okay, so if I move this, now I see that, yeah, the character kind of, when it gets up, it goes up in the air a little bit before it comes back down to the ground. So when he first gets up, the feet are on the ground somewhere right around there. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to do another additive rig key, lock everything down. And also I'm going to save this because it's been a while and I've been doing quite a bit. And then when he goes up in the air, like all the way up to there, let's bring him back down to the ground. And then we can zoom into that section. And just adjust a few of the placements here with some extra keys. Looking better. There might be a couple of steps there where the feet still go into the ground a little bit, but and there's a little sliding there that I could go to the feet themselves and try to deal with that. Like there's a little slide right there. Almost looks like he's on ice or something. That's probably a problem with the cat. Sometimes the cat food grips so it doesn't do quite the food slide or something like that. Usually, the feet are pretty good about that and locking the feet down, but sometimes it's a little slow. And I would have to use the foot control to fix that slide, but probably. I mean, I think maybe the body control to use the cat food in the direction of the slide. So I'm keyframing this to try and compensate for any issues that I'm finding. There's other things in here we could look at, like the shoulders are doing some weird things in some places. It might be actually okay for this character, but like if I didn't like these hunched shoulders here, right there, I could go up and find the shoulder controls and rotate them down a little bit. That's the upper arm. So that's probably the one I would use. I don't know that I would necessarily, some of these controls you translate, some of them you don't. Like that doesn't look right for me to, it's not looking right on the shoulder for me to translate that. I might want to try to rotate it. And actually that doesn't look good either. So I don't really think that's the right control. I might want to, if I move the timeline, because there's keys on all of this, on every single frame, it'll just pop back to where it was. As long as I don't hit key, it won't change it until I hit the keyframe button. So I don't really think that's probably the control that I actually want. I think that there's probably a collarbone in here. So you can see there's a lot of stuff in here. Here's a clavicle. So I might actually want the clavicle. And some of these things have controls like circles and cubes and stuff, and some of them are bones. And so if I find the left clavicle here and rotate it, okay, so that's the thing which is going to fix that shoulder. If I don't like that hunched shoulder stuff, I could try to rotate this down a little bit and set a key on it. So that will propagate across the whole thing. So again, until it reaches one of those neutral keys that I set. But for this, I think probably the shoulder's up too high all the time. So I'm going to go ahead and set a key on that. And I could do the same thing on the right clavicle. It looks a little high too. Just drop it a little bit and then hit a key on that too. And there might be more that I could do on that. We could go back to that key again and just drop it a little bit more. And reset that key. And that just might look a little better on that bottom part. So if your finger's looking out, you can rotate the finger to the right place. I think the rope foot toe speed probably the finger is pretty good. Northern speed sometimes it could be the finger is not good with the small feet. You might have to do something. Okay, so any questions about doing this to get your sequences as good as possible? I'm going to save this. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to talk about briefly here is facial animation. We have Metahuman Animator. I can close this, I guess. And I'll stop sharing as well. And I'll bring back my camera. Okay, so you're going to use your iPhone. Yeah, can't see that. Picture my daughter. We're going to use a app that has the Metahuman Animator in it to capture facial stuff. It doesn't have to be the same person capturing all the facial stuff for your group, because we probably have enough phones that can actually run that app. So this is an iPhone 15 Pro. It has the stuff that the Metahuman Animator needs to run it's not just video, it's more than video. Well, I'm running out my battery at this moment. Got that. So the app is called Live Link Face. You can find it on the iOS store. Live Link Face by Epic Games. Yeah, this really isn't showing up very well. Inside of it, when it opens, it's gonna have a Metahuman animator choice or a live link choice. You want to use the Metahuman animator. That's for recording a video, but it's gonna, again, be more than a video. There's a bunch of files in there. And that's why you have to have one of the newer versions of iPhone. Like I had an 11 and it would not work with it. I had an 11 Pro, did not work with it. But if you have like a 14, 15, even newer, 13 probably, maybe even 12. If it's one of those, and definitely if it's a Pro, it will probably work because the Pros have extra little camera things back here. They have infrared and other LiDAR things on them that the regular ones don't have. Does anybody know if they have one of those? Can I see the hands so I know how many are in the room? Just one? Nobody has a newer version of iPhone? It has to be iPhone, not Android. So we have one other one. So I've used mine before. When you choose it, it just comes up like a regular video phone recording thing with a big red button. And you put it on some kind of a tripod like this one, facing towards you. Make sure it's stable and straight. And then you're going to sit down in front of it and make sure that your face is pretty much framed in there really well. You want it to be sort of big in the frame. And, you know, I would lower this tripod and put a chair or something and sit down so I can just sit with my back straight and comfortable to do the performance. What's important about this is that at the beginning of the video, you need to do a few different particular facial expressions. You can't have glasses on. You'll just frame your face kind of like this. And, you know, no glasses. There's going to be a light from the ring light, so you won't have all these shadows on your face. But then you want to do like a neutral pose. And then you want to do a 3/4. You don't want your lips to be together like this. You don't want them to be open like that. You want them to be closed, but loosely. You basically want it to be like the metahumans when you see them. And then you go to the right and you make sure that you can see all of both your eyes. And then you go to the left until you can see just the edge of your inner part of your far eye. So it's neutral, right, left, and then teeth. It's not a smile, not that. It's grimace. That's called a teeth pose, where it can see your incisors. It does that to put the teeth in your mouth in the right place. So those three poses will make it so that it does a really good capture for your face. And then you don't have to do as much work to make it look good. It should have good lip syncing and everything. When you have a head rig on, you can't do the right and left because the head rig's always in front. You can only do the neutral and the teeth pose. So you can get a decent result. I've gotten decent results from that, but this last time I did it, I kind of forgot to do the teeth pose, and my neutral wasn't very good either. And so I didn't get a good result. So I'm going to redo it. And then all you hit is record, do your thing. Don't move your head around very much. You can move your face around. You can do all kinds of things. You can move a little bit like this, but you can't like do that. You don't want to be moving like that because you'll go out of frame. And you want to make sure that you can see your face for the whole thing without losing and going out of frame. Okay, so I don't know how much actually came through on this video here, but that's how you're going to do it. Now these are big, big files, and